Hello, and thank you for joining our discussion on forced labour in UniQlo's supply chain. We're going to be looking at the grand challenge that is affecting UniQlo from this issue, really identify that problem, and then ultimately provide some solutions after some brainstorming. Now, some context for the situation. UniQlo is a fast fashion apparel company. They are based in Melbourne and were founded in Australia in 2012. They do source their cotton from a province in Xinjiang to reduce costs. It's also known as the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, XUAR. The situation there is that more than 1 million Uyghur Muslim ethnic minorities have been detained and forced into labor in re-education camps. In these camps, they are allowed to be paid far below the minimum wage, and a vast majority of well-known fashion brands have been sourcing their garments from 53 intermediary manufacturers who are known to source their cotton from these regions. So it does cause a lot of issues to be able to identify where production is being sourced from. Now, to flesh out this problem, the current state of UniQlo is that since 2020, there is increasing evidence of cotton being sourced from the Xinjiang province of China, where that forced labor is being used. Now, this has caused a worsening of conditions for workers, damaging their brand reputation, and it also opens them up to legal and financial implications. With this in mind, though, UniQlo aims to distance themselves from involvement in forced labor in its supply chain while still ensuring those low-cost supplier contracts. Now, some data and analysis for this is on the right. There are legal implications to be considered and financial penalties with that, brand image concerns, as well as disruptions to supply chains, such as seizure of goods that we've seen in the US. Now, with solutions for this, there are two possible avenues we could look at with brainstorming solutions. First is to sever trade completely with the XUAR, but also maybe collaborative solutions, things that engage and improve the situation in Xinjiang, but to alleviate still those issues affected by UniQlo for the issue. Some proposed solutions from this brainstorming, three are here. The first is by investing in technologies such as isotope analysis and DNA testing with the aim to improve the traceability of cotton from this region. The expectation is that this will provide UniQlo with more accurate information on which of these intermediary suppliers are falsely advertising their goods and signal to consumers that work is being done. Second is to completely divest in supply chain intermediaries who support the use of XUA cotton and pivot towards other alternative markets such as India and sub-Saharan Africa. Now, these regions aren't as known as being using forced labor, so it does alleviate the issue for UniQlo. And there are also some cost benefits as well. For example, the wage increases in these regions haven't been as substantial as in China over the last few decades. And third is to leverage industry associations such as NGOs and government agencies that maybe are better equipped with the guidelines and have already developed processes to ensure the due diligence process of supplier contracts. So maybe we would implement a certification system with other companies to strengthen our efficacy with negotiating contracts with these intermediary suppliers to prevent forced labor in our supply chain. There's also a benefit to this as we can market this to our consumers and ultimately potentially improve profits. We're going to choose this as our main solution to be applied. Now, to flesh out this solution, we have a very specific goal. It's to leverage involvement from industry associations, develop that certification system, and we're going to measure this by how many companies we can onboard in this coalition, analyze which suppliers are involved with this practice, and include them in a database system that we will share with other companies. Now, it is relevant since we are aiming to also improve brand awareness, and some of these systems are already in place with these NGOs, like the Better Cotton Initiative. It is also time-bound with goals over 4 quarters within a year. Also, we must consider the ethical component to this. This does include support with UN's 5 SDGs here, the third SDG 17, which is aimed at including many people and stakeholders to the playing field to improve situations of many other SDGs. Also leaves the door open to trade with the XUAR. So the long term is to maybe improve working conditions for the Uyghurs if possible, but still to alleviate the grand issue affected by UniQlo. Some weaknesses, though, is that there's corruption that may come about from intermediary suppliers attempting to gain accreditation dishonestly. Maybe re-affect this by establishing robust processes from the beginning and regularly audit the accreditation process, and maybe even incentivize these suppliers to onboard themselves with appealing contracts. And some strengths to the solution, well, it's going to reduce the initial input that UniQlo has to make, since some of these NGOs and agencies will already have systems in place for the accreditation system. And ultimately, it will improve our brand image as we can market this to our consumers. Now, in conclusion, we have considered both avenues for the solution, breaking completely from trade with the XUAR, or maybe solutions which keep that trade, but also improve the situation that's affecting UniQlo. We've established time periods, and we've also identified how relevant it is. And we've also ensured that the solution is ethically balanced, ensuring that we take into consideration as many SDGs as we can. And we've also proposed some opportunities to combat the challenges that may come about from implementing this solution. I wanted to thank you for joining me for my discussion on forced labour in Xinjiang.